The fire of the enemy increases. It is terrible. He is gathering all his strength for one final struggle. Shells, canister, and bullets are falling around like a hailstorm. Our different brigade commanders ride along their lines, encouraging their men. Still, there's no faltering, but wild cheers, and on they press. When our army arrived within about 50 paces, and before we had fired a shot, a general flash was seen along the enemy's line, and a storm of bullets went flying overheads. They had aimed too high. Onward our troops advanced, pale with excitement, compressed lips and blazing eyes, betokening their spirit of their determination. Hi, my name is Bill Coughlin, and host of First Person Civil War podcast. In the spring of 1864, on the eve of the gargantuan campaigns to the east in Virginia and Georgia, the Army of the Gulf left New Orleans, combined with other elements from the Mississippi River, and marched deep into Louisiana. It soon became apparent to the Confederates that this army, aided by gunboats on the Red River, were marching toward the state capital of Shreveport and began organizing its forces. Now, listen to a 16-year-old Irish immigrant as he joined the Confederate charge at the defining battle of the Red River Campaign. Episode 64 is entitled Private J.P. Blessington and the 16th Texas at the Battle of Mansfield, and relies on his book, The Campaigns of Walker's Texas Division by a Private Soldier, which he published in 1875. Joseph Palmer Blessington was born on 21 April 1847 in Dublin, Ireland. Records are scarce, but sometime in the 1850s, J.P. emigrated to New York, and from there, he made his way to Texas sometime before the Civil War began. On 25 March 1862, the 16th Texas mustered for service at Camp Gross near Hempstead. Though it mustered northwest of Houston, the regiment mostly hailed from across central and northeast Texas. J.P. Blessington enlisted as a private in Company H and marched east toward Arkansas. The 16th Texas remained in the Trans-Mississippi Department, which included the Confederate states west of the Mississippi River. As the regiment operated in Arkansas in the summer of 1862, an all-Texas division began to form in the state at Camp Nelson, just outside of the town of Austin. Private Blessington noted that the 16th Texas did not join this division until it arrived at Camp Nelson on 14 October. By November, Major General John G. Walker took command of the division in Arkansas. Under this formation, Private Blessington and the 16th Texas fought at the Battle of Milliken's Bend and at Opelousas. By March of 1864, Private Blessington and the 16th Texas encamped around the town of Simmsport, Louisiana, along the Yellow Bayou. The Texans had on 5 March completed work on Fort Humbug, which now guarded the mouth of the Red River from Union gunboats that frequently patrolled the various rivers of Louisiana. On 7 March, Private Blessington and the 16th Texas received orders to be in readiness to march in response to the Union Army's movements further south. But the Texans soon discovered a more immediate threat to their fortifications. On the evening of the 12th, Scurry's brigade took its position at Fort Humbug. They learned that several of the enemy's gunboats and transports loaded with troops had arrived at Simmsport, even before our infantry pickets were informed by our cavalry pickets of the approach of the enemy. Our infantry pickets were taken completely by surprise. They made a narrow escape from being captured. These gunboats and transports belonged to elements of the 16th and 17th Corps from Vicksburg. With full control of the Mississippi River, the Union Army and Navy had devised a campaign where the Army of the Gulf, commanded by Major General Nathaniel P. Banks, would eventually combine with these corps from Vicksburg, capture the Confederate capital, seize cotton along their march, and just as in Arkansas, establish a pro-Union government in that part of Louisiana. The Union formation that captured Simmsport was too great for the Confederate garrison at hand, and they retreated up the Red River. Private Blessington and the 16th Texas marched in Brigadier General William R. Scurry's 3rd Brigade, and they eventually reunited with the rest of Major General Walker's division. As the Texans continued to retreat up the Red River toward Shreveport, they joined other Confederate divisions, which fell under the command of Major General Taylor's District of West Louisiana. By 7 April, Major General Walker's division encamped just north of the town of Mansfield, Louisiana. Alongside them were Brigadier General Alfred Moulton's division and Brigadier General Thomas Greene's cavalry division. With the Army of the Gulf now advancing upon Mansfield, the Texans and Louisianans received orders to cook their rations that night. At 4 a.m., 8 April 1864, the Confederates would march south to meet the Union Army in the field. After halting outside, Private Blessington and the 16th Texas marched back through the town of Mansfield. The inhabitants of Mansfield appeared to be astonished when they beheld Walker's division marching proudly back to meet the enemy, before whom they had so lately retreated. As the troops marched through the town, the sidewalks were thronged with ladies, misses, and matrons, who threw their bright garlands at the feet of the brave Texas boys, beseeching them in God's name to drive the enemy back and save their cherished homes, assuring us that they looked to us for protection. On hearing these patriotic words, we felt that we were indeed thrice armed, and, although greatly outnumbered, would in the end be victorious. Approximately 4 miles south of Mansfield, the Confederates formed a line of battle that straddled the Mansfield Road. The 16th Texas and their brigade formed on the south side of the road, and the furthest right of their division. With the Union Army still marching toward them, the Texans pulled down fences to have less obstacles in their front. As the men prepared themselves for the fight to come, Private Blessington witnessed, of all things, a lunch in what would soon be a battlefield. On the right of the division, about 50 yards in advance, was our favorite leader, General Walker, surrounded by his staff officers, eating their lunch before they enter into the conflict. Casting our eyes to the left of the division, you can behold General Dick Taylor, mounted on his black steed, followed by a lonely courier, advancing towards General Walker. On his arrival, the two generals conversed together some 20 minutes. General Taylor then returns, going a little quicker than he advanced. This owing, I suppose, to hearing heavy firing on the left of the line, which plainly indicated the work of destruction had commenced. The sounds that Private Blessington and both generals heard was the charge of General Moulton's division on the Confederate left flank. The Battle of Mansfield had begun. Though the Army of the Gulf outnumbered the Confederates as a whole, it was currently on the march, with elements separated from each other by several miles. This meant that the Confederates enjoyed a local numerical superiority. The first Union element to arrive and array itself for battle was the 4th Division of the 13th Corps, which formed the center along the road leading to Mansfield, and a division of cavalry which protected both of their flanks. In this first advance, Major General Moulton and 3 of his regimental commanders fell and were eventually repulsed. During the charge off to the east, Private Blessington, the 16th Texas, and the rest of their division maneuvered closer to the Union infantry in their front. Resting a few minutes in the timber, the command was given, "By companies, into line!" After the line was formed, orders were given to fix bayonets. In the meantime, the enemy continued firing upon us from their batteries. Soon the command was given to double quick. We immediately commenced advancing in the direction of the enemy, who were securely posted behind a rail fence. They greeted our coming with a perfect shower of lead and hail. As Private Blessington and the rest of Walker's Texans charged the Union lines, they joined in advance along the entire Confederate line, from the west, northwest, and north. The fire of the enemy increases. It is terrible. He is gathering all his strength for one final struggle. Shells, canister, and bullets are falling around like a hailstorm. Our different brigade commanders ride along their lines, encouraging their men. Still, there's no faltering, but wild cheers, and on they press. When our army arrived within about 50 paces, and before we had fired a shot, a general flash was seen along the enemy's line, and a storm of bullets went flying overheads. They had aimed too high. Onward our troops advanced, pale with excitement, compressed lips and blazing eyes betokening their spirit of their determination. Major Francis A. Sears, who took command of the 67th Indiana later that month, was on the receiving end of the Texans' charge. Captain Nim's battery had taken position in the road immediately on our left, and the 77th Illinois on our right. We remained in the woods but a short time before the enemy advanced and attacked us with an overwhelming force, driving the regiment to the fence at the edge of the woods. As the Texans charged, the 3rd Division of the 13th Corps appeared on the field, but they did not reinforce the beleaguered Union line, and instead began to form a second line to the south. Poised to smash the 1st Union line was Private Blessington and the 16th Texas. Nothing could withstand the impetuosity of our charge. After crossing the fence, we came abruptly upon the enemy's guns. With loud huzzas, we rushed upon the enemy before they could reload. A murderous discharge of rifle balls was poured into their very bosoms. Afterwards, using our bayonets, we mercifully bayoneted them, ere they could recover from their astonishment. Their prostrate column was trampled in the mire. Ah, here comes the tug of war. The enemy is panic-stricken. They abandon their artillery. They cannot stand the bayonet charge. They retreat, and from their appearance, every man is for himself. The 1st Union line completely collapsed under the weight of the Confederate charge, and the 2nd line suffered the same fate. The 3 Union divisions were now routed and fled back down the Mansfield Road. Next in the order of march was the 1st Division of the 19th Corps, which was aware of the Confederates' approach. Brigadier General James W. McMillan, commander of the 2nd Brigade, positioned his men where they would eventually face Major General Walker's Texans. About 1 mile to the rear of the ground where the line of battle was formed, I encountered a dense mass of disorganized cavalry, moving to the rear in utter confusion, and only succeeded in getting through with the use of the bayonet. I am sorry to be compelled to report that there were officers who exclaimed in great confusion, "All is lost! You had better turn back! We are badly whipped!" etc. But I am proud to say that my men gave but little heed to the cowardly remarks made to them. He talked about being in reserve before filling the gap between 2 brigades, and continued, "These 2 regiments got into their new position just as the enemy opened fire, but without confusion." Triumphantly, Private Blessington and the 16th Texas pursued for several miles until they came upon this prepared Union line. Entirely unconscious of the arrival of fresh troops to their assistance, We passed halfway through the field before we became aware of their reinforcements. Then came the terrible shock. Volley after volley, and shower after shower of bullets came whizzing down upon us. It was utterly impossible to advance, and to retreat beneath the range of their long guns seemed equally desperate. We lay down, arose again, and then involuntarily sought such shelter and protection that the ground could afford. The first charge against the 19th Corps was a failure, and Private Blessington and the rest of the Confederate line quickly reformed and renewed their charge. Encouraged by our brave leaders, our brave men attempted again and again to charge the enemy, who were behind their barricades of logs and fences, which they hastily constructed to cover their retreat. But human fortitude and human bravery were unequal to the task. The very air seemed dark and hot with balls. The thunder of artillery guns resounded through the heavens and seemed to shake the earth to its very center. And on every side, we heard their crushing sound as they struck that swaying mass, tearing through flesh, bone, and sinew. Within a few short moments, many a gallant spirit went to its long home. Having held the 19th Corps center along the Mansfield Road against the first advance of Private Blessington and his division, Brigadier General McMillan sent 2 regiments he held in reserve to extend the right flank. What remained had to hold the line against the Texans' advance. The 15th Maine and 160th New York did well and repelled the rebel force in their front in splendid style. The action closed on the right about 6:45 p.m., and a short time after, the rebel fire ceased in the front. Despite the repeated Confederate charges, the 19th Corps held their line until dark descended over the battlefield. While both lines rested under arms, Private Blessington witnessed the tending of the wounded and dying. Too much praise cannot be bestowed upon the doctors and chaplains of the division for the care and kindness with which they looked after the dying and wounded. They spent the night with their lamps going over the battlefield, serving the dying, and attending those who might recover. Oh, what a boon is even a drink of cold water to a maimed soldier lying on the field of battle, tortured with pain and thirst. As the wounded and dying received attention, the Union Army prepared to retreat back down the Mansfield Road. The Battle of Mansfield was over. Confederate reinforcements, which were on the march throughout the battle, now linked up with Major General Taylor's men south of Mansfield and began the pursuit. On 9 April, they met the Army of the Gulf again, themselves bolstered by the 16th and 17th Corps at the Battle of Pleasant Hill, which ended in another Union retreat. The Battle of Mansfield marked the turning point in the Red River Campaign and the furthest Union advance upon Shreveport. The Union Army retreated down the Red River, but a Confederate pursuit was cut short as Major General Taylor's superior took troops away from him following the Battle of Pleasant Hill. Part of that diverted force was Private Blessington and the 16th Texas, who marched into Arkansas and fought at the Battle of Jenkins Ferry on 30 April 1864. Thank you for listening to the 64th episode. The link to Private Blessington's open source book is now available on the podcast website, firstpersoncivilwarpodcast.com. On Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn this week, you will find a sketch of the Battle of Mansfield. Please like, share, subscribe, and rate the podcast on whatever platform you find it. To allow for enough time, I will publish my next episode on 1 July. To mark the 163rd anniversary I've decided to make another special episode. Colonel Andrew H. Tippin of the 68th Pennsylvania. Sergeant Levi W. Baker of the 9th Massachusetts Battery. And Lieutenant Colonel Freeman McGilvery of the 1st Volunteer Brigade. All tried to stop the advance of Private J.S. McNeely and the 21st Mississippi as they smashed through the 3rd Corps at the Peach Orchard at the Battle of Gettysburg. My name is Bill Coughlin, and thank you for listening to First Person Civil War Podcast.